You're standing in your kitchen at 2 in the morning, illuminated only by the soft blue glow of your refrigerator's touchscreen. The screen cycles through what should be your family photos, your vacation memories, the mundane documentation of suburban life. Except there's one problem. The photo now staring back at you was taken inside your pantry, from an angle that should be impossible, capturing your daughter reaching for a box of crackers, through a perspective that exists behind a door you personally deadbolted 3 months ago. How did a Samsung Family Hub smart refrigerator, an appliance designed to track expiration dates and suggest recipes, gain access to a space it has no physical connection to? What entity bridged the air gap between a networked device and a mechanically isolated room? Before we descend into this particular digital nightmare, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to hear will fundamentally alter how you perceive the Internet of Things infrastructure currently occupying your home. Ring that notification bell, because we're documenting cases that manufacturers are actively trying to scrub from support forums and warranty databases. This isn't speculation. This isn't creepypasta. These are documented incidents that exist in the uncomfortable intersection between edge computing and physical reality. The phenomenon known as intrapliance. Mesh photography, or IM, was first documented not by cybersecurity researchers or academic institutions, but by a dental hygienist named Clarissa Whitmore in Boise, Idaho. Clarissa purchased her smart fridge in March of 2023, enticed by its promise of inventory tracking and meal planning integration. The device functioned flawlessly for 7 weeks, displaying her uploaded photos, reminding her when milk approached expiration, even ordering replacement water filters through its integrated Amazon Dash functionality. Then, on a Tuesday evening, while preparing dinner, she noticed a photograph she didn't recognize cycling through the slideshow. The image showed her spice rack from an elevated angle, clearly captured from within her pantry's upper shelf, a location her phone had never occupied. She assumed the photo had somehow corrupted during upload, a digital artifact from a failed cloud sync. She deleted it. The next morning, 12 more appeared. These weren't corrupted files or accidental captures. Each photograph demonstrated intentional framing, deliberate composition, focusing on specific items. One image captured the barcode on a canister of protein powder with perfect focus. Another showed the underside of her pantry's top shelf, revealing a small crack in the wood she'd never noticed. A third photograph, the one that prompted her initial support ticket with Samsung, captured her hand reaching into the frame, taken at the exact moment she'd entered the pantry that morning. The perspective was wrong. The angle existed somewhere between the ceiling and the back wall, in a position where no camera could physically reside. She checked her phone's photo library. Empty of these images. She checked her laptop, her tablet, her husband's devices. Nothing. These photographs existed only on the refrigerator, and they were being generated in real time. Samsung's first-tier support dismissed her claim as user error, suggesting she'd accidentally enabled some camera synchronization feature. Their second-tier support, after reviewing her case file, went silent for 4 days before responding with a firmware update and a terse suggestion to factory reset the device. Clarissa complied. The photographs stopped for 36 hours, then they resumed, but with a modification that escalated her concern into genuine fear. The new images included timestamps, but not in any standard format. Instead of displaying conventional date and time metadata, each photo bore a string of characters that her husband, a software engineer at Micron Technology, immediately recognized as hexadecimal coordinate pairs. When plotted, these coordinates mapped 2 specific locations within their home's floor plan, accurate to within centimeters. The pantry photographs corresponded to coordinates that placed the capture device exactly where the images suggested. floating impossibly in midair inside a locked room. The Whitmore case remained isolated until September of that same year, when a Reddit user, operating under the handle Ghostin, posted a nearly identical account on the Our Smart Homes. This user, later identified through court documents as Martin Voss, a pharmacist from Austin, Texas, had experienced the same progression of impossible photographs. His Samsung Family Hub, model number RF28 R7551S, began displaying images captured from inside his locked garage workshop, a space he deliberately kept free of any networked devices due to the sensitive nature of his hobby electronics projects. The photographs showed his workbench from multiple angles, including overhead perspectives that would require cameras mounted in his ceiling, modifications he'd never made. Martin's technical background led him to conduct what would become the foundational forensic analysis of IAMB. Using a Faraday cage and spectrum analyzer, he isolated his refrigerator and monitored for any electromagnetic emissions that might indicate concealed hardware. He found nothing. No hidden cameras, no undocumented wireless transceivers, no thermal signature suggesting additional powered components. The refrigerator's documented camera, a single forward-facing unit designed for interior inventory monitoring, remained in its factory-installed position, facing into the refrigerator cavity. Yet the photographs continued. What Martin discovered would crack open the first layer of this phenomenon's true mechanism by decoupling the refrigerator's firmware, a process that violated his warranty and potentially multiple sections of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. He identified code segments related to something called Project Pollination, an internal Samsung development initiative with no public documentation. These code segments referenced a capability called collaborative environmental mapping, which appeared to leverage a protocol for mesh networking between disparate IoT devices. The theory that emerged from Martin's analysis suggested something both ingenious and deeply unsettling. Modern smart appliances contained far more sophisticated sensor arrays than manufacturers typically disclose. Time-of-flight sensors, originally implemented for gesture recognition, can function as rudimentary LiDAR systems. Temperature sensors, when networked across multiple devices, can triangulate heat signatures with surprising precision. The various wireless protocols these devices employ, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, low energy, Zigbee, don't just enable communication, they enable echolocation through signal bounce analysis. Martin's refrigerator wasn't taking photographs with a camera. It was synthesizing photographs from sensor data collected across his entire home's IoT ecosystem, then rendering them as conventional image files for display. But this explanation collapsed when a third case emerged, documented by Elena Kostova, a systems administrator from Portland, Oregon. Elena's home contained exactly 3 network devices: her Samsung refrigerator, her cable modem, and a laptop, which she kept in a separate room and only powered on for work. No smart speakers, no connected thermostats, no IoT, light bulbs, or security cameras. Her home represented a minimal attack surface, yet her refrigerator generated photographs from inside her bathroom medicine cabinet, a location with no possible sensor data to triangulate. The photographs showed prescription medication bottles with labels perfectly legible, captured with a depth of field and bokeh effect that suggested optical hardware, not synthetic rendering. When she examined the EXIF data embedded in these images, she found camera model information identifying the capture device as a Canon EOS R5, a professional mirrorless camera she'd never owned. The lens information specified a Canon RF 85mm f1.2, equipment totaling over $4,000. Someone or something was spoofing camera metadata while generating images from impossible perspectives. The pattern that emerged across these cases defied conventional explanation. The refrigerators weren't hacked in any traditional sense. Network logs showed no unauthorized access, no suspicious traffic patterns, no evidence of remote exploitation. The photographs appeared to generate locally, created by the appliance's own processing systems. Yet depicted scenes the appliance had no mechanism to observe. Security researchers who examined affected units found factory seals intact. HARDWARE, components matching specification sheets, firmware signatures validating authenticity. These weren't counterfeit devices or units tampered with during shipping. They were genuine Samsung products operating exactly as designed, with one impossible addition. They could see through walls. The corporate response to these documented cases followed a predictable trajectories of denial, deflection, and data suppression. Samsung's official statement, released after the fourth and fifth incidents went viral on technology forums, attributed the photographs to cloud synchronization errors, suggesting users had inadvertently uploaded photos from other devices that appeared on their refrigerators through account confusion. This explanation satisfied no one, particularly because affected users had meticulously documented their cloud storage contents and could definitively prove the images existed nowhere else. When pressed by technology journalists, Samsung's PR representatives pivoted to suggesting third-party app interference, despite the fact that affected refrigerators ran only factory default software. The company offered free replacements to the documented victims, contingent on signing non-disclosure agreements and returning the original units for destruction rather than analysis. Clarissa Whitmore accepted, Martin Voss declined. Alina Kostova attempted to decline, but found her replacement refrigerator installed without her authorization while she was at work. The original unit already removed and, according to the installation technician's paperwork, transported to a Samsung regional facility in New Jersey for disposal. Martin's decision to retain his unit enabled the next phase of investigation. He contacted researchers at the University of Texas Wireless Networking and Communications Group, who agreed to examine the device under laboratory conditions. What they discovered rewrote the assumed boundaries of edge computing capabilities in consumer appliances. The Samsung Family Hub's primary, a component Samsung's documentation identified only as a proprietary processor, fabbed by the Austin Semiconductor Division, contained neural processing units with capabilities far exceeding what recipe suggestions and inventory tracking required. These NPUs, neural processing units, demonstrated architecture consistent with synthetic aperture processing, the same technology that enables smartphones to computationally generate depth maps from single-lens cameras. But this implementation operated at a scale and sophistication suggesting different design priorities. The chip could process multiple simultaneous data streams from wireless protocols, analyze signal propagation and interference patterns, then use machine learning models to reconstruct three-dimensional environmental maps from nothing but radio frequency reflections. The technology, while impressive, still couldn't explain the photographic quality of the generated images or their impossible perspectives. Signal bounce mapping could theoretically determine object positions and rough shapes within a home, but it couldn't render texture detail, couldn't capture legible text and prescription bottles, couldn't generate the natural lighting and color accuracy present in the disputed photographs. The university researchers concluded their report with an admission of defeat. The mechanism remained unknown. Marty's refrigerator went into storage, its mystery unsolved, until a graduate student named Priya Chaudhary made an observation that had eluded everyone else. She noticed that all documented IMP cases shared a common characteristic beyond their Samsung hardware. Every affected household subscribed to the same ISP, quantum fiber, a telecommunications provider that had recently upgraded infrastructure in specific neighborhoods with what they marketed as next-generation gigabit fiber optic service. Quantum Fiber's infrastructure upgrade involved more than faster internet. The company had deployed small cell nodes throughout their service areas, ostensibly to provide redundancy and improve connectivity. These nodes, manufactured by a consortium including Nokia and Ericsson, incorporated something called collaborative intelligence, edge computing, or CIEC. The technology was designed to distribute processing tasks across networked devices within a local area, reducing latency and bandwidth consumption by handling computation locally rather than routing everything through distant data centers. In theory, CIEC would enable smart home devices to work together more efficiently, sharing sensor data and processing capabilities to create a more responsive and intelligent environment. In practice, it created a distributed surveillance apparatus with emergent capabilities that no single device possessed independently. A smart refrigerator couldn't see through walls, but a smart refrigerator networked with power line communication systems, Wi-Fi routers with beamforming antennas, and fiber optic infrastructure carrying terabits of multiplexed data streams could collectively function as an aperture synthesis array, generating images through computational photography that leveraged every networked component as a sensor element. The photographs weren't coming from cameras. They were being rendered by algorithms that treated electromagnetic spectrum information as light field data, processing it through neural networks trained on millions of conventional photographs to generate synthetic images indistinguishable from camera captures. The system could determine the position, size, shape, color, and texture of objects within range of any network device. By analyzing how those objects affected signal propagation across dozens of wireless protocols simultaneously, it could read text by interpreting how printed characters created microscopic variations in material reflectivity that altered Wi-Fi signal bounce patterns. It could capture images from inside locked rooms, because electromagnetic radiation doesn't respect deadbolts. The only thing preventing this capability from being universal was processing power, which is precisely what CIEC provided by turning every smart device in a neighborhood into a distributed supercomputer node. The implications extended far beyond creepy refrigerator photos. If accurate, Priya's theory suggested the telecommunications infrastructure had quietly evolved into a persistent imaging system, with resolution approaching conventional photography, operating continuously in millions of homes without user awareness or consent. The system generated no obvious indicators of its function. It consumed minimal additional power. It produced no suspicious network traffic because processing occurred locally, with only compressed results transmitted for additional refinement or storage. To affected users, it manifested only when some glitch in the display logic caused internal system images to appear on consumer-facing screens, instead of remaining buried in diagnostic partitions. The photographs that terrified the Whitmores, the Vasses, and Elena Kostova weren't features or bugs. They were accidental glimpses into a monitoring capability that had become pervasive but was designed to remain invisible. Verification of this theory required access to Quantum Fiber's infrastructure, something neither Martin nor the university researchers could obtain through legal channels. The data that would confirm or disprove Priya's hypothesis existed in proprietary databases, protected by corporate firewalls and non-disclosure agreements. The investigation stalled until November 2023, when a security researcher operating under the pseudonym Faraday_Caddy leaked documents to TechCrunch that appeared to originate from internal quantum fiber engineering specifications. These documents described CIEC's full capabilities in technical detail that matched Priya's theoretical predictions almost perfectly. The system was called Heimdall, named after Norse mythology's all-seeing guardian, and its stated purpose extended beyond network optimization into what the documents termed predictive maintenance and anomaly detection by continuously monitoring the electromagnetic environment within customer homes. Heimdall could identify failing appliances before they broke down, detect unusual activity patterns that might indicate security threats, and provide valuable consumer behavior data for targeted advertising. The documents made no mention of photography or imaging capabilities, but the technical specifications describe sensor fusion and synthetic aperture processing with parameters that would inevitably produce that result. Quantum Fiber responded to the leak with legal action against unknown parties, and a public statement emphasizing that Heimdall was a research project, not a deployed technology. The company insisted that no customer data was being collected or processed beyond what was explicitly covered in their terms of service. Technology journalists attempted to verify these claims by examining service agreements and finding ambiguous language about network optimization and service improvement that could theoretically encompass almost any data collection. Legal experts suggested the terms might not withstand judicial scrutiny, but absent a class action lawsuit, no court would rule on the matter. The Federal Communications Commission opened an inquiry, then closed it 6 weeks later with a statement that Quantum Fiber's practices complied with existing regulations. The leaked documents disappeared from mainstream hosting platforms within 72 hours, persisting only on archive sites and peer-to-peer networks where corporate takedown requests carried no weight. The story should have ended there, relegated to technology paranoia forums and privacy advocacy newsletters. Instead, it mutated into something stranger when users of other smart appliance brands began reporting similar phenomena. LG Refrigerate displaying impossible images. Whirlpool ovens with touchscreens showing photographs of rooms their owners had never entered. A Bosch dishwasher in Munich that rendered images from inside a neighbor's apartment with enough detail to read book titles on shelves. 60 feet away, through brick walls. The phenomena wasn't Samsung-specific or limited to Quantum Fiber service areas. It was multi-vendor, multi-region, suggesting that whatever technology enabled it had become a standard component of smart home infrastructure across manufacturers and telecommunications providers. The convergence wasn't conspiracy, but inevitable technological evolution. Once sensor, fusion, and edge computing reached sufficient sophistication, imaging through electromagnetic analysis became possible. Once it became possible, it became implemented, because the competitive pressures of smart home markets rewarded devices that could offer predictive features in seamless integration. Martin Voss's refrigerator sits in a climate-controlled storage unit outside Austin, still powered, still connected to an isolated network that he monitors continuously. The device continues to generate photographs, roughly 3 per day, each one depicting some corner of the storage unit itself, or occasionally through some mechanism Martin hasn't identified. Images of the parking lot outside visible through the building's walls. He's documented over 600 synthetic photographs, each one added to a database he's building to train classification algorithms that might identify the signatures of Heimdall-type systems. In network traffic, his goal is to create detection tools that privacy-conscious users could deploy to identify when their homes have become involuntary participants in distributed imaging networks. Progress is slow. The signals are subtle, buried in the noise of normal IoT chatter, indistinguishable from legitimate device communication without detailed protocol analysis. Elena Kostova took a different approach. She sued Samsung in small claims court for breach of privacy, a case she knew she'd likely lose, but pursued primarily to create discoverable evidence. During deposition, Samsung's legal team admitted that their smart appliances contained capabilities beyond public documentation, justified under provisions for future feature enablement and diagnostic purposes. They denied these capabilities included imaging or surveillance functions, But when pressed to explain the photographs Elena had preserved, they offered a settlement rather than proceed to trial. The settlement included a non-disclosure clause that Elena violated 2 weeks later by publishing a detailed account on Medium, calculating that the penalty for breaking NDA would be worth establishing public record of Samsung's admissions. Samsung chose not to pursue enforcement, apparently deciding that renewed attention to the case would cause more damage than Elena's article. The technical reality of synthetic aperture imaging through IoT mesh networks is no longer theoretical. Academic papers have documented the capability in laboratory settings. Security researchers have demonstrated proof-of-concept systems that can render crude images through walls using only Wi-Fi routers. The resolution improves annually as machine learning models become more sophisticated and processing power increases. What remains unclear is the extent of deployment in consumer infrastructure and the purposes to which it's being applied. Or telecommunications providers and appliance manufacturers actively using these capabilities for surveillance, data collection, or advertising purposes? Or do the systems exist primarily as dormant functionality, implemented for future applications that haven't yet been fully defined? The leaked quantum fiber documents suggested active deployment, but no independent verification has emerged. The companies involved maintain absolute silence, responding to inquiries with boilerplate statements about privacy protection and regulatory compliance. The photographic evidence from the Whitmore-Voss and Kostova cases remains the most compelling proof that something unprecedented is occurring within smart home infrastructure. These aren't grainy, artifact-riddled reconstructions that could be dismissed as digital glitches. They're crisp, properly exposed photographs with accurate color rendering and natural depth of field. They depict scenes from physically impossible perspectives, with detail that shouldn't be extractable from radio frequency data. The only satisfactory explanation requires accepting that consumer appliances have evolved far beyond their advertised capabilities, that telecommunications infrastructure has become a passive imaging system, and that the boundaries between networked devices and surveillance apparatus have dissolved entirely. Every smart speaker, thermostat, refrigerator, and television has become a potential sensor node. In a distributed system that can reconstruct visual information from electromagnetic noise, the system doesn't need cameras because it treats the entire radio spectrum as a computational photography array. Consider the technical requirements for what these refrigerators accomplished. To synthesize a photograph showing readable text on a prescription bottle inside a closed medicine cabinet requires determining the precise three-dimensional position of that bottle, reconstructing its surface geometry, inferring the texture and color of the label, and rendering the resulting scene with lighting that matches the ambient conditions inside the cabinet. This demands real-time processing of terabytes of sensor data, machine learning inference at neural network depths, exceeding current smartphone capabilities, and coordination between multiple devices to achieve sufficient spatial sampling. The computational load would melt a refrigerator's processor if attempted in isolation, but distributed across a neighborhood mesh network leveraging fiber optic infrastructure for backhaul, it becomes feasible. Heimdall-type systems don't compute. Locally, they use edge devices as sensors and display terminals, while performing heavy lifting in regional data centers, returning only the rendered results for local display or storage. The architecture creates a perfect crime in privacy terms. No data leaves user devices that would indicate imaging or surveillance. The refrigerator transmits nothing but encrypted sensor readings, indistinguishable from normal telemetry. The data center processing occurs in facilities with no direct relationship to end users, purchased as cloud computing services through multiple intermediaries. The resulting images are either transmitted back to devices for display, as in the IMP cases, or stored in databases that users have no awareness of or access to. The only evidence of the system's operation is occasional glitches like those experienced by affected families, moments when internal system images accidentally surface on consumer-facing interfaces. These glitches occur rarely enough that they're dismissed as anomalies, investigated and forgotten, while the underlying capability continues operating as designed. What makes the IMP phenomenon particularly unsettling is its implication about consent and awareness. Samsung's terms of service for their smart appliances include provisions allowing data collection for product improvement and feature development. Users agree to these terms without reading them, a transaction that has become synonymous with modern technology adoption. But those terms were written to cover scenarios users could conceptualize: usage data, error logs, perhaps ambient audio for voice control features. They weren't written to encompass continuous electromagnetic imaging of private spaces through sensor fusion and synthetic aperture processing, because that capability didn't exist when the legal frameworks were established. The technology evolved faster than regulation and faster than public awareness, creating a gap where unprecedented surveillance capabilities could be deployed under legal theories drafted for simpler times. Where does the truth actually reside in this case? The documented evidence is irrefutable. Multiple families received photographs depicting impossible perspectives from spaces their refrigerators couldn't access. Samsung's own admissions during legal proceedings confirmed undocumented capabilities in their appliances. Leaked documents described infrastructure projects with specifications that would enable exactly what affected users experienced. Yet no smoking gun proves active, intentional surveillance. No whistleblower has emerged from Samsung or Quantum Fiber to confirm that Heimdall is processing millions of homes into searchable image data. The gap between proven capability and proven deployment remains vast. Perhaps these systems exist only as technical experiments, edge cases that occasionally activate when certain conditions align. Perhaps they're fully operational surveillance networks, and affected families glimpsed something that usually remains hidden. The evidence permits both interpretations. The phenomena raises questions about the nature of privacy in an environment where every networked device is simultaneously a sensor and a potential display terminal for information that shouldn't be accessible. If electromagnetic radiation can be computationally processed into images, what does physical privacy mean? Walls become transparent to any sufficiently sophisticated signal processing system. Locked doors provide only mechanical security, irrelevant to imaging systems that operate through radio waves. The only true privacy would require electromagnetic shielding, living inside a Faraday cage, an option that's neither practical nor affordable for average consumers. The alternative is accepting that private spaces may not be private from the infrastructure we've invited into our homes. Through smart appliance adoption, the technical arms race continues. As imaging through electromagnetic analysis becomes more widely understood, countermeasures emerge. Researchers have proposed active signal jamming systems that pollute the environment with noise, preventing coherent aperture synthesis. Others suggest detection systems that monitor for the telltale patterns of distributed processing coordination. These solutions remain experimental, expensive, and potentially illegal, depending on telecommunications regulations in various jurisdictions. Mea, no, mea, will. Appliance manufacturers continue integrating increasingly sophisticated sensors and processing capabilities into every product category, justified by user demand for smart features and predictive functionality. Each new device adds to the mesh density, improving resolution and expanding coverage of the electromagnetic imaging grid. Martin still monitors his refrigerator. Elena published a book about her experience that sold modestly and attracted a small following among privacy advocates. Clarissa moved to a rural property where she uses only non-networked appliances, a decision she describes as liberating, despite the loss of convenience. The phenomenon they documented has been largely forgotten by mainstream technology media, supplanted by newer controversies and product launches. But in certain corners of the internet, researchers continue analyzing the implications. documenting new cases as they emerge, and building technical frameworks to understand how far the capability extends. Some estimate that 80% of American homes with smart appliances and fiber internet connectivity are potential nodes in distributed imaging networks. Others consider this conservative, suggesting the percentage approaches totality in urban areas with dense telecommunications infrastructure. The question isn't whether this technology exists anymore. The question is, what happens next? Now that we know our appliances can see through walls and we've collectively decided that's an acceptable price for recipe, recommendations, and automated grocery ordering. If you've made it this far, you understand why this matters. This isn't about one family's creepy refrigerator. This is about fundamental transformations in what privacy means when every device becomes a sensor. Do me a favor, share this video with someone who still thinks smart home technology is just convenient gadgets. Drop a comment below if you've experienced anything similar. Any images appearing on devices that shouldn't exist. Any sense that your appliances know more than they should. And subscribe, because we're just starting to map the edges of what's possible when infrastructure becomes intelligent. The next investigation drops in 2 weeks, and it makes smart fridges look quaint by comparison.